It begins with an 8-year-old girl named Mira, a child whose small frame carried a world of memories far heavier than her years. As she walked onto the stage of America's Got Talent, the stadium lights glowed brighter than anything she had ever seen, yet her heart remained anchored to the quiet darkness of the past she carried with her. Clutched tightly in her hand was a little wooden music box, worn at the edges, faintly scratched, but precious beyond words, for it was the last gift her mother had given her before she left this world. 2 years had passed since that day, yet grief lingered around Mira like a quiet shadow, following her to school, to sleep, and now, to the biggest stage of her life. The audience saw only a tiny girl with trembling hands, the judges saw only a nervous child, but what they could not see, what no one could see, was the enormous battle happening inside her chest. How do you sing when the one who taught you to love music is no longer here? How do you breathe when every breath feels like a reminder of loss? How do you stand under bright lights when your heart has lived in darkness for so long? These were the questions swirling inside Mira as she stood on that stage, trying to hold herself together, trying to remember why she agreed to be here at all. Her father, sitting anxiously at the side of the stage, watched with eyes full of hope and heartbreak. He had enrolled her in the competition not because he wanted fame or applause, but because he believed, deep in his soul, that she needed to find her voice again. He had spent countless nights sitting by her door, hearing her cry silently, afraid that speaking her pain out loud would somehow make it more real. But one evening, when he found her holding her mother's music box close to her chest, humming the soft melody with a voice so small it seemed ready to disappear, he realized something profound. His daughter wasn't done singing, she was simply waiting for a moment strong enough, brave enough, sacred enough to let her heart speak. And today was that moment. As Mira stood beneath the towering lights, her legs shook, her throat tightened, and tears gathered at the corners of her eyes, threatening to spill. She could feel hundreds of eyes watching her, thousands of breaths holding still, and millions of expectations forming silently in the air. The judges smiled warmly, but even their kindness felt too overwhelming. Simon Cowell leaned forward gently and asked her name, and her voice, barely a whisper, carried it across the stage. When he asked what she would be performing, she swallowed hard and answered, "A song, for my mom." That simple sentence pulled a wave of emotion through the room, like a silent tide touching every heart present. The audience softened, the judges leaned in, her father covered his mouth, fighting back tears. The music began, a soft, delicate instrumental that felt like sunlight filtering through a window, and Mira closed her eyes. In that moment, she wasn't standing on a stage anymore. She was back in her small bedroom, sitting beside her mother, watching her wind the music box, listening to the melody that had become her comfort. She remembered her mother's voice, soft and warm, telling her, "Sing with your heart, Mira. God listens even when the world doesn't." The memory wrapped around her like a warm blanket, and for the first time since her mother's passing, she felt something she had thought she lost forever: peace. Her lips parted, and the first note escaped her trembling mouth. It wavered like a flickering candle flame, fragile yet alive. The second note carried more strength, and the third even more, until her voice began to flow, not just as sound, but as emotion, as prayer, as healing. Every word she sang was a confession of her loneliness, every breath a testament to her strength, every note a conversation with heaven. The audience could feel it. Their eyes widened, their hearts tightened, their breaths deepened. They weren't listening to a performance, they were witnessing a child pour out the contents of her soul. Mira's voice grew steadier, warmer, fuller, and soon the trembling had vanished, replaced by an almost angelic clarity that rose above the stage and touched every corner of the room. Some people began to cry silently, others clutched their hands to their chest, and at least one judge wiped away tears openly. For in her small voice, they heard something rare and powerful: resilience born from grief, courage born from pain, and faith born from love that never died. Halfway through the song, something extraordinary happened. Mira felt warmth spreading across her shoulders, as if someone had wrapped a gentle arm around her. She felt a presence, not seen, not heard, but deeply felt, like the soft whisper of a familiar embrace. It was not the crowd, not the lights, not the music. It was something sacred, something divine, a moment where heaven seemed to lean closer, where the unseen made itself known in the most delicate, indescribable way. Mira did not understand it fully, but her heart recognized it instantly. It felt like her mother was there, standing beside her, guiding her voice, lifting her spirit, reminding her that love never truly leaves, it simply changes form. Tears slid down Mira's cheeks, but she didn't stop singing. In fact, her voice grew even stronger, filled with a purity and innocence that left the entire stadium in awe. The lights above her seemed to glow softer, the stage around her seemed to breathe, and every person watching felt as if they were witnessing something holy. The music swelled, building toward the final verse, and Mira lifted her chin, letting her last notes soar like a prayer released into the sky. When the final note faded, an almost sacred silence filled the arena. It lasted only a few seconds, but it felt like time itself paused to honor her. Then, suddenly, the audience erupted into applause, loud, thunderous, overwhelming. People rose from their seats, clapping, cheering, crying. The judges stood, giving her a standing ovation. Cameras flashed. Hands clapped over hearts. And Mira, the little girl who once believed her voice had died with her mother's passing, stood in the center of it all, surrounded not by grief, but by love. She looked toward her father, who had tears streaming down his face, and without thinking, she ran into his arms. He held her tightly, whispering, "I'm so proud of you, so proud." She whispered back, "Daddy, I felt her. I felt Mom." He nodded, pressing his forehead to hers. "She's always with you," he said softly. "Always." Then Simon Cowell stepped forward. His eyes were red, his voice softer than usual. "Mira," he said, "I've heard many performances, but what you just did, that was not singing. That was healing. That was love. And I think the world needs to hear it." He reached toward the golden buzzer. The audience gasped. Mira held her breath. And then, he pressed it. The arena exploded in golden confetti that rained down like blessings from the heavens, wrapping Mira in shimmering light. She closed her eyes and lifted her face toward the falling gold, and at that moment, she felt free. Free from the weight of silence. Free from the heaviness of grief. Free from the fear that had held her captive for so long. The golden confetti sparkled around her, reflecting the stage lights, but also reflecting something much more important, the rebirth of her spirit. This moment wasn't just a celebration. It was transformation. A moment where pain turned into purpose, where a child learned that even the smallest voice can carry the greatest message, where a broken heart discovered it could beat again with the help of faith. And that is the message of Mira's story, that healing does not always come quickly, nor easily, nor loudly. Sometimes healing comes in a trembling voice. Sometimes it comes in the memory of someone we loved. Sometimes it comes in a moment where we feel a presence we cannot see. And sometimes, healing comes when we finally gather the courage to step onto a stage we never believed we could stand on. Mira's song did more than move hearts, it reminded every listener that grief is not the end of love, that silence is not the end of hope, and that faith can lift even the smallest soul from the deepest darkness. So as you finish this story and return to your own life, remember this: your voice matters, even when it shakes, your story matters, even when it hurts, and your heart matters, even when it feels broken. Because somewhere, in ways we may never understand, love continues. God listens. And hope waits patiently for us to rise. Thank you for listening to this beautiful journey, and once again, welcome back to Kind Tales. Please subscribe and like this video, and stay with us for more stories that touch the heart and awaken the spirit.